Io ho una gran famiglia italiana pazza. I have a crazy and large Italian family. The first 18 years of my life were drenched in love and pasta sauce. My childhood was exactly how you might imagine a childhood. I had the nagging older brother who had me rebound for him as he practiced his jump shot. I had the annoying little sister who had more stuffed animals than sins. I had two loving parents who took me to soccer practice and cooked my meals. For 18 years, my life was so normal, blessed, and pain-free that I thought life would always be like this. I came to college at Notre Dame and was blazing through my first semester when I got a phone call from my brother, Austin. Just before my brother hung up, he offhandedly threw this line at me. "Oh, by the way, did you hear that Dad moved out?" I'll never forget those words. I took them in silence. Sure, 43% of marriages in America end in divorce, but that couldn't happen to me. That couldn't happen to my parents, who had been married for 32 years. My normal, blessed, pain-free Italian family was too happy. Why me? Immediately, I felt like I was the victim, that my parents were punishing me in some way. This was just like me getting grounded, but worse. Not only did I feel like the victim, but I also felt at fault. I blamed myself for ever having come to this school in the first place and creating such a huge financial argument between my parents. I thought I was a bad son and didn't love them enough or consider their needs. Did I tell them any of this? Not a chance. When I felt like my relationship with my parents was at its lowest point ever, I was too victimized and too ashamed to talk with them. Instead of working on our relationship, I actively worked on not having a relationship. I stopped calling them on the weekends, and I was distant from them when I went home. As I was blaming myself, I found I was also blaming God because He was supposed to be love. I thought this separation was senseless. I saw no reason to it, and I had no idea how a loving God could put so much pain and rift in my life. My prayer became weak, short, and non-essential to my daily life. I often skipped it. No matter how much my mom cried, no matter how much I hated hearing the words alimony, child support, or visitation rights, I kept things to myself. I didn't allow God to love me. I struggled to see much beauty in the world. How could God create anything beautiful when my life had suddenly become so ugly? I clung to a fake smile for months, hollow and hurting. I was externally strong, but internally broken. So what changed? How am I able to speak to you today about the hardest thing in my life when for so long I had buried those feelings within myself? The answer isn't simple. There isn't some magic potion that makes the pain disappear forever. You can't bottle God. The first step towards having a real relationship with the people who are closest to me was mending my relationship with myself. I forgave myself. Toward the end of freshman year, I started to make some really good friends. And real friends this time. Friends who really cared about who I was as a person and who could tell you my celebrity crush. It's Rachel McAdams, if you were wondering. And my creepy kindergarten stories. I began to feel as though I actually belonged at this university for the first time. I was thankful for everything my parents did for me financially to allow Notre Dame to become my home, but I realized that it was their burden, not mine. As I started to feel a sense of belonging in a space apart from my home in West Virginia, little by little I stopped thwarting God's attempts to share in the suffering with me. The pain was still immense, but I no longer felt I was at fault for my parents' divorce. Eventually, I realized that my parents' loathing for each other had nothing to do with me. For a while after that, I ran away. I ran away from confronting the feelings because I had released myself from guilt. No one knew the extent of the pain in my heart, but my faith in God and in people was lower than it had ever been. My hollow faith and self-centered attitude were less than effective coping mechanisms, so I decided to go on a retreat. I prayed for the strength to get over my problems, and instead, I got John Paul. John Paul was a spiritual advisor on this retreat, and he had a long conversation with me about my family. I told him everything. It was the first time I had shared my full story with anyone. He asked me to focus on my blessings. My blessings? Those didn't exist, right? I realized that I had only been focusing on the negatives, the uncomfortable feeling that came when my parents had to be in the same building, or the broken home my sister will grow up in. In the midst of all that pain, I saw how God had really worked enormous positive change in my life. I became closer with all 4 of my siblings. We talk on the phone, hang out more, and are even planning some sibling-only vacays. I know at least one example of exactly how not to do a marital relationship. I became more independent in the ways of my own finances, preparing my own meals, and I even got pretty good at laundry. I can relate with so many more people in this world and share in their sufferings only because I've had similar struggles of my own. In that moment, lying on the shore of a lake and looking up at the stars, I made a decision. I stopped running. Is it still hard? Every day. My parents' divorce fundamentally shook me to my core, and I questioned my faith. I doubted what I had always believed to be true. My relationship with each of them remains strained even today. There's no such thing as a perfect relationship, and trust me, my relationship with my parents is the poster child for imperfect relationships. But now I don't box the feelings off, wrap a bow on it, and call it okay. I learned it's not the bow that makes things beautiful, it's God's gift of life itself. And like Roberto Benigni said, La vita è bella. Life is beautiful.